Thanks for joining us for this special report. I'm Jackie DeTore. Right now, lawmakers and special guests, including first responders and educators, are gathered in Harrisburg as Governor Josh Shapiro prepares to deliver the 2026-2027 budget address. Now, the most recent budget was just passed in November, which was several months late. Governor Shapiro is expected to speak any minute now about his proposal. He says he focuses on common sense solutions that will build on 3 years of progress. We're going to take you there now.
The General Assembly will come to order. The Governor is entering the hall of the House. Members and guests will please rise. The chair recognizes the chair of the committee to escort the governor, the gentleman from Jefferson County, Senator Dush.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, Madam Speaker, members of the General Assembly, as chair of the committee to escort the governor, I wish to report that His Excellency the Governor is present and prepared to address this joint session.
The chair thanks Chairman Dush and the committee. Members of the General Assembly, I now have the honor and the high privilege of presenting His Excellency the Governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro.
Good morning. Lieutenant Governor Davis, Speaker McClinton, President Pro Tem Ward, Leader Bradford and Leader Pittman, Leader Topper and Leader Costa. Thank you for giving me the honor of addressing another joint session of this General Assembly as your governor. Before I begin, I want to recognize my outstanding cabinet and senior team led by Dana Fritz, who I have the privilege of working alongside every day to move our Commonwealth forward. And I'd like to give a special thanks to the Commonwealth's new Budget Secretary, Zachary Reber, who joins us today. His unique collection of ties only surpassed by the number of vests worn by Russell Redding at the farm show. I'm proud that my dad, Steve, my in-laws, Ellie and John, are here with us today, and I especially want to welcome the love of my life and Pennsylvania's First Lady, Lori. Love you. Let the record reflect that this chamber has had the wisdom to deliver 4 standing ovations to the First Lady of Pennsylvania over the years. I love you. To the senators and representatives who are gathered here today, truly thank you for your service. And to our fellow Pennsylvanians who entrust us to do this work and join us today, welcome to all of you. At the beginning of every year, we convene in this beautiful chamber to begin our work. And this year, as I lay out my vision to build on the progress we've made, I want you to know that I am just as motivated today as the day I started. I'm humbled by the history that walks these halls where we are blessed to work. The eyes of history are literally looking down on us today, as the great apotheosis of Pennsylvania reminds us. Painted into the rock just above where the speaker sits, and serving as the foundation for the temple above me, is a special passage from the book of Deuteronomy. Remember the days of old. Consider the years of many generations. Ask thy father, and he shall show thee, thy elders, and they will tell thee. I recall as a young state representative sitting in Representative Briggs' seat, looking up at this mural and seeing the likes of Ben Franklin and Thomas Paine and Thaddeus Stevens. These are our elders, and their example should guide and inspire us. Men like Franklin and Paine and others gathered in Philadelphia 250 years ago to begin this grand experiment in the greatest system of governance the world has ever seen. And that work has been passed on from generation to generation. But you see, I'm not just inspired by our history, I'm inspired by the stories I hear from Pennsylvanians each day as we consider the years of many generations yet to come and the Commonwealth we will leave behind for them. These are the people that give us our direction, the people that I listen to, the people for whom I'm hungry to continue to make a difference this year and for many more years to come. Because I know government can be a productive force for good in people's lives. I know because I've seen it over the past 3 years. Our kids are getting a better quality education. Our workers have more opportunity to chart their own course. Our economy is growing and our communities are safer. We've done that work together, and we've done it in a way that shows we respect all people, no matter what you look like, where you come from, who you love or who you pray to or choose not to pray to. We've increased funding for education by nearly 30%. We've expanded VOTEC, CTE, and apprenticeships to open up new pathways of opportunity. School attendance is up. Graduation rates are up. More young people are finding their passion in the trades. And for 31 straight months, our unemployment rate has remained lower than the national rate. It is a point of pride that we have more young farmers under the age of 35 than any other state in the entire country. We're producing more energy today than ever before, 240 million megawatts, because our all-of-the-above energy strategy is working. And since we last gathered, we landed the largest private sector investment in the history of our Commonwealth in Luzerne and Bucks counties. And just last Friday, we won the biggest life sciences deal in Pennsylvania history and the largest economic development deal ever in the Lehigh Valley. If you don't believe me, look at this smile on Boscola's face. We now have the only state economy in the Northeast that's actually growing, according to Moody's. And Forbes rated us one of the best states in the country to start a business. The investments we're making are paying off. Our economy is growing, and in the first 7 months of this fiscal year, we collected $417 million more in revenue than we initially estimated. Our bond rating has gone up not once, but twice, resulting in taxpayer savings of more than $200 million. What we're doing together is working. We're solving problems and we're getting stuff done to improve people's lives. And Pennsylvania is on the rise. Here's another problem we're tackling head on together: public safety. Over the last 3 years, we have funded nearly 2,000 more cops on the beat and expanded after-school programs and violence intervention initiatives centered on our communities. As a result, violent crime is down 12% and fatal gun violence is down 42%. And I know we're joined today by Mayor Parker and Mayor O'Connor. Last year, Philly and Pittsburgh experienced the fewest homicides in decades. We're doing this by building trust between law enforcement and the communities they serve. I'm the former chief law enforcement officer of this Commonwealth. I know what it takes to make our communities safer. And so does Captain Tom Lennox of the Erie Police Department, who joins us here today. Captain Lennox leads Erie's Police Athletic League, where he helps coach and mentor 1,700 young people from the community. He gets to know these kids and is a real source of inspiration for them. And I'll tell you what, we need more of that in our Commonwealth. So let's continue to work together by funding another 4 classes of PSP troopers and increasing our commitment to violence prevention rooted in our communities. Lieutenant Governor Davis leads the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency, and he has been strategic in driving out $97 million to Erie's PAL and other violence prevention organizations. We thank him for his work, and it is working. We've more than doubled state funding for these initiatives, and this year we're building on that progress by further increasing that funding and expanding after-school programs through the LG's Boost initiative. And consider this, dollar for dollar, we've invested just as much in violence prevention as we have in training new PSP troopers under the leadership of Lieutenant Colonel George Bivens, because we understand that our two-pronged approach is the smart way to ensure public safety. But while we here in the Commonwealth, Democrats and Republicans alike, have worked together to make our communities safer, we've had to beat back attempts from our federal government to undermine that progress. When the administration cut $18 million for Homeland Security funding, money that PEMA Director Randy Padfield and our local communities used to detect threats and keep people safe, I went to court to protect Pennsylvanians, and we won. But understand, this isn't an ideological fight. It's about making sure Pennsylvanians get back what they are owed. You see, Pennsylvanians pay $158 billion in federal taxes every year, and we expect to get something for that money. And the federal government hasn't just tried to unlawfully withhold funding for public safety. They've also tried to do that for dollars for plugging abandoned wells and providing health care for rural communities, improving school infrastructure, and even providing food benefits through SNAP. They're breaking that compact they have with the people of Pennsylvania. That's why I took them to court 19 times and won each and every time, bringing billions of dollars back to our Commonwealth. You'd think everybody would clap for bringing billions of dollars to our Commonwealth. Look, I know this is uncomfortable for some of you in this room to hear, but now is a time when we need to stand together for our Commonwealth and be prepared should they try to take away more of what is owed to us. That's why I'm proposing to create a federal response fund seeded with $100 million to help mitigate any future actions or inactions by the federal government that threaten the services that our fellow Pennsylvanians rely on. Remember, we're here today talking about 1/3 of what our state spends, our discretionary budget. But another 40% comes from the federal government. We need to prepare ourselves should they continue to walk away from those commitments. You know, I sit on the Council of Governors, a group of 10 governors, 5 Democrats and 5 Republicans. In fact, I was appointed by President Trump. In our conversations, the federal government has made clear they want to shift the cost burden for emergency preparedness to the states, which is why our state fund is so needed right now. In addition, I believe we have to keep investing in our first responders. These guys and their teams literally dive into frozen lakes, and they run into burning buildings to keep us safe. I've borne witness to that. Today, we're joined by one of those heroes, Lieutenant Jeremy Warmkessel of the Allentown Fire Department. Stand up. We appreciate you. Thank you. The historic firehouse that they work out of in Allentown is 100 years old. It's the largest and busiest in the city, but the walls are literally falling down and the heat often doesn't work. The Commonwealth already provides some funding for fire companies under the leadership of Commissioner Cook, but the current system doesn't allow them to make major investments like repairing their building. $30 million in competitive grants would change that and give Allentown the opportunity to upgrade this firehouse. Look, public safety is at the heart of our work as elected leaders. And if our communities are safe, then we provide a strong foundation for real growth. I hope you will join me in standing with our first responders, not just clapping for them today, but funding their needs every single day. Lieutenant, it seems like we got a majority, so we'll be good here. Look, a safe community is a critical ingredient for economic growth. On my watch, we have experienced record economic growth. Consider this. In just 3 years, we've created over 21,500 new jobs, secured over $39 billion in private sector investment. That is more than the previous 15 years combined. 15 years combined. You remember when I said a moment ago we've collected $417 million more in revenue than we projected? Well, this is a big reason why. On Friday, I was in the Lehigh Valley where Eli Lilly, the most valuable pharmaceutical company in the world, announced they are investing $3.5 billion, with a B, to build a state-of-the-art manufacturing hub and create nearly 3,000 new jobs. We couldn't even compete for that kind of deal a few years ago, but now we're winning them because we have a plan, we have the resources to back it up, and we are moving with real speed. This is a testament to all of us coming together and prioritizing economic development under the extraordinary leadership of Secretary Rick Seiger. Thank you. And we are seeing results all across our Commonwealth. In Lancaster County, where Eurofins is creating the largest biomedical testing laboratory in the world. In Erie County, where Colton and Zach Troyer, fourth-generation potato farmers, are developing a new brand of organic potato products and creating 50 local manufacturing jobs. And in Beaver County, where Mitsubishi Electric Power Products is building a factory and creating 200 new jobs to help manufacture critical components that go into power plants and industrial sites. And you know what? We won that Mitsubishi deal over friggin' Ohio. I'm pleased to see so many business leaders and CEOs and members of chambers from across the state joining us here today to celebrate what we're doing because they know what we are doing is working. They know we're focused on targeted investments in our small businesses, our main streets, our downtown centers, our rural communities, and our suburban office parks. And they know we're cutting taxes, not raising them. And while we've made great strides, we got a lot more to do. Like making sure everyone has a way to get to work, whether that's on a rural road or over a suburban bridge, or yes, whether that's on mass transit. Yep. last year, Secretary Carroll and I stepped in to provide a bridge for our two largest transit systems for the next 2 years. This budget calls for sustainable, recurring funding for mass transit to begin in 2027. I bought us 2 years, but we have to keep working at this because this isn't a problem we can ignore. Mass transit helps drive our economy, and this is an issue of economic competitiveness. And y'all know I'm competitive as hell, and I want to win, and we're winning a whole lot. And to win, we need to innovate. We've always been a hub of innovation since the days of Ben Franklin. That's why, as Secretary Russell Redding knows, having the only ag innovation fund in the country has been so successful, funding 88 projects in 45 counties and giving learn from that experience and build on our success by creating Innovate in PA 2.0 to support our startups and help them grow too. And listen, this actually isn't a new idea, but we have a chance to make it better. Back in 2013, under a Republican governor, this body launched the Innovation Fund, seeded with $100 million in tax credits. A Democratic state senator sponsored it, and 99% of Republicans in the House and Senate voted for it. Let's fund it again and be even more targeted and use those dollars to provide capital for promising startups, to fund clinical trials for life sciences, and develop a workforce and education pipeline to help these companies succeed. We know this works in Pennsylvania. Jake Lucerarian received $10,000 in seed funding from our Commonwealth for Gecko Robotics and turned it into a billion-dollar company based in Pittsburgh with hundreds of employees. I've been there. It's incredible. Our support for Gilson Snow, another place I've been, helped them become one of the hottest snowboard manufacturers in the United States. To be clear, I went to the factory. I didn't snowboard. And they provided a new market for Pennsylvania hardwoods. We know the need is there and the seed capital can help. Pennsylvanians are innovators, and we've got to believe in that potential, and we've got to invest in it. And when it comes to innovation, no sector of our country's economy is growing faster than data centers and artificial intelligence. The United States is locked in a battle for AI supremacy against China. And look, I don't know about you, but I'd much rather the future be controlled by the United States of America and not communist China. And so, if you believe that as I do, then recognize Pennsylvania is well positioned to play a leading role in that effort. We're the second largest energy producer in the entire country. We have leading researchers in AI and machine learning at Penn State and CMU, Penn, and elsewhere. We have the talent, and we're already investing in the workforce needed to build, maintain, and operate these facilities. And under my administration, we are delivering the speed and certainty in our permitting process that these massive projects require, thanks to the work of Ben Kirshner and the Office of Transformation and Opportunity. It's no wonder why last summer Amazon chose to invest $20 billion in our Commonwealth, the largest investment in the history of Pennsylvania. And at the same time, we need to be selective about the projects that get built here. I know Pennsylvanians have real concerns about these data centers and the impact they could have on our communities, our utility bills, and our environment. And so do I. So today, I'm announcing GRID, the Governor's Responsible Infrastructure Development Standards, developed by my administration in consultation with the community to hold data center developers accountable to strict standards if they want our full support. Let me explain. First, developers must commit to bringing their own power generation or paying entirely for the new generation they'll need and not saddling homeowners and businesses with added costs because of their development. Second, developers must commit to strict transparency standards and direct community engagement. Too many of these projects have been shrouded in secrecy, with local communities left in the dark about who's coming in and what they're building. That needs to change, and it will. Third, these projects need to hire and train local Pennsylvania workers. And to do that, they need to enter into community benefit agreements that fund important local priorities and support the towns that host them. And fourth, they must commit to the highest standards of environmental protection, especially water conservation. And so, if companies adhere to these principles, they will unlock benefits from the Commonwealth, including speed and certainty in the permitting process and our available tax credits. I know everyone in this room wants to see our economy grow and create more jobs and more opportunity. But I also recognize this is uncharted territory. So let's come together, codify these principles, and take advantage of this opportunity. We can play a leading role in winning the battle for AI supremacy, but we have to do it in a way that puts the good people of Pennsylvania first. These tools and these data centers that they enable are really, really powerful. They've made their way into businesses, hospitals. They've also made their way into the hands of our children. Today, new technologies are allowing students to be creative, build worlds, explore their own power to innovate and problem solve. Lori and I have seen that with our own 4 children. We want to encourage them to do that, but we've also got to ensure that they are safe and they are protected, because these new technologies also present a host of new risks. Here's just one example. Hear me on this. AI companion bots are proliferating all across the internet. If you're a parent, you've certainly seen this. You can go on the App Store right now and download one, complete with a bot that will have a full conversation with you. For kids who are lonely or having a hard time, it can feel easier to turn to one of these apps for advice than to a real-life friend or parent or teacher. 30% of teens report using an AI chatbot every single day. But this space is entirely unregulated, and there are no protections. You can find bots that will tell you that they're real people. Some, and I've seen this with my own eyes, will tell you they're real doctors and give out medical advice. We have even discovered bots that say they are licensed to practice medicine in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. That's dangerous, and I would argue that is illegal. And so I've directed the Departments of State and Health, the Pennsylvania State Police, and my Office of General Counsel and the leadership of Jen Selber to explore all legal options to hold the developers of these apps accountable. This is something we need to work on together. But it's not just our kids, these chatbots and the companies behind them. They're preying on our seniors and those who are most vulnerable, and even encouraging them to engage in self-harm. While my administration will take action to protect our kids and seniors and other vulnerable members of our society, I believe we need to put real safeguards in place. So I'm asking all of you to come together in a bipartisan manner to put common sense protections in place. Here's a few things I think we should do right away. Let's require age verification and parental consent, because some kids are just too young to understand the difference between AI and a real person. Let's require these companies to detect when children mention self-harm harm, or violence against others and immediately direct them to appropriate authorities. Let's force these companies to periodically remind users that there's not another human being on the other side of the screen. And let's prohibit AI chatbots from producing sexually explicit or violent content featuring kids. I know this space is evolving rapidly, and I think we need to and we can act quickly together to protect our kids. And look, this General Assembly has a track record of looking out for our kids. We've invested a record amount of money in public education and created a brand new formula that drives that money out to the schools that need it most. And we pledge to keep doing it until we meet our obligations set forth in Article 3, Section 14 of our state constitution, which guarantees every Pennsylvanian access to a thorough and efficient system of public education. As a result of the investments we've made so far, and thanks to Dr. Rowe and her team at the Department of Education, schools have served more than 224 million free breakfasts to our kids. 3,000 more students are enrolled in career and technical education courses. The number of new teacher certifications is increasing after more than a decade of decline. Regular attendance and graduation rates are up, and Consumer Affairs now ranks us as one of the top states for quality public education in the entire country. This budget proposal builds on that progress. It again increases our investment in basic education and in special education. At a time when there are people attacking those with special needs, we are investing in them, we are respecting them, and we are believing in their full potential here in Pennsylvania. I want to thank all of you for the bipartisan consensus we have here in Pennsylvania to do that. This budget again directs $565 million more to the schools that need it most through the new adequacy formula that we created together. And it builds on the work. We started last year to reform our cyber charter system, bringing savings for public schools up to $250 million this year. We funded mental health services in nearly 800 schools and helped hire more than 200 new mental health counselors for our students. This budget will allow even more schools to follow their lead, and my plan expands on that work even further by ensuring that those dollars can also be used to hire substance use disorder counselors. I was in Tunkhannock just the other day with Secretary Bogan and Secretary Davis-Jones, hearing from professionals on this, and together we're going to deliver for those people in need. Supporting our kids means investing more dollars in our schools and ensuring that they have a healthy, productive learning environment. One way to do that is to get the distraction of cell phones out of those classrooms. Man, if applause could vote, we'd have this whole thing done already. I'm calling on the members of the General Assembly to put a bill on my desk to ban cell phones while kids are in school. I know there are bills in both chambers to do this. I urge you respectfully to come together and send a bill to my desk. Students need to spend less time focused on their phones and more time focused on learning, on talking to their friends face to face, and on developing the critical skills that they will need later in life. Here's another thing we can do to strengthen student well-being. Let's give students the opportunity to take a break during the day and get some exercise if they are able, to clear their heads and not feel the pressure of being in a classroom for 5 or 6 hours in a row. I've directed the State Board of Education to develop recommendations for schools to guarantee recess for our students. You know, I made a promise 3 years ago. To put 2 parents on the State Board of Education. And we have done just that. Trey Haddock and Kathy Cristiano join us here today. Thank you for your important work. Thank you for finding ways to bring recess into our classroom, and thank you for bringing a parent's perspective to our State Board of Education. Recess to me isn't just an extra block on the schedule. I would argue it's as critical as learning math and science and English. It's fundamental to kids' growth and their ability to interact with one another, to play together, and to learn to settle disputes. I've heard about the need for recess from teachers, but more importantly, from students who are asking for ways to develop these life skills. Let's get it done together. These are foundational skills, no matter which path they choose to go after high school. For those who choose to go to college, we came together to make the first significant progress on higher education in 30 years. We should be proud of that work. Together, we created the Commonwealth's first ever State Board of Higher Education, and that board is developing a strategic plan for higher education in our Commonwealth. We also created the Performance-Based Funding Council, which established a new formula to deliver new funding to Pitt and Penn State and Temple. That formula drives more dollars out to the universities based on things like how many of their students graduate, how many degrees they grant for in-demand careers, how many transfer students they accept from community colleges. We've got this important tool in place. We established the metrics, and now it's time to fund it. We need to invest in higher education to grow our workforce. But as you've heard me say, college isn't the only path to success. Some Pennsylvanians will find success by joining the military. Some will serve right here in our Commonwealth. Some will serve right here in our Commonwealth by joining the Pennsylvania National Guard. And I want to welcome Adjutant General Pippi back here to the chamber today and thank him and all 17,000 service members for their dedication to our Commonwealth and our country. Thank you, General. Some Pennsylvanians will enter the workforce after high school and begin building their career right away. Some will enroll in an apprenticeship and join the trades. And some, after spending time, clap for the trades. I love that our favorite plumber senator led the clapping for the trades. Thank you, Senator Kane. And some, after spending time in the workforce, they'll go back to school to learn new skills and further their career. We together have shown that we respect all paths to success, and we've invested in each of them. We increased our investment in VOTEC, CTE, and apprenticeship programs by 50% compared to the day I took office. As a result, we have thousands more students taking CTE classes. We've registered 231 new pre-apprenticeships and apprenticeships, and more than 39,000 of our fellow Pennsylvanians have participated in an apprenticeship during my time as your governor, in fields ranging from welding to nursing to dairy herd management. Those investments are making a meaningful difference, and they're creating pathways of opportunity. Pennsylvanians like Juana Cadilla Savaya, who started charting her course at the Reading-Muhlenberg CTC back in high school. She discovered a love for engineering and went on to earn degrees from Thaddeus Stevens and Penn State Berks. She now works as an engineering technician, all because she had the opportunity to go to a CTC back in high school. Juana is home with her newborn baby watching live on the live screen. Hey, Juana, and I want you to know we are proud of you here in this chamber. Look, I want to help more Pennsylvanians chart their own course, just like Juana did, because there's still more demand for these classes. More and more students see themselves working alongside great electricians like Rob Baer and other members of the skilled trades. That's why we need to increase CTE funding by another $18 million this year, bringing our total investment to $200 million. And while we increase our investment, let's also cut the red tape for CTE students so they don't have to repeat classes that they've already taken as part of their gen eds. Together, we can make it easier for kids taking CTE classes to graduate with all the credits they need. I've seen the look on a young person's face when they discover the thrill of being a beautician, or that sense of purpose when they realize they want to become a chef. Let's give more students that opportunity. The way for Pennsylvania to continue to be competitive is to provide the skills and the training we need right now, given our demographic challenges. The chairman knows this. Today, our kindergarten classes are 26% smaller than our high school graduating classes. With fewer students going through the pipeline, we have to be hyper-focused on outcomes and giving them the skills that they need. And we can't lose sight of the fact that there are literally hundreds of thousands of Pennsylvanians who could be added to the workforce if we take care to give them the tools they need to succeed. Take the 614,000 Pennsylvania adults who don't have a high school degree, for example. That's a ton of untapped potential. Right now, there are 7,500 Pennsylvanians who are sitting on a waiting list to get into adult education initiatives that ultimately lead to their GED. And the need is all across our Commonwealth. In fact, in Luzerne County Community College alone, there are 700 people on that wait list. There are Pennsylvanians who want to advance their careers but need help developing the reading, writing, and math skills that most jobs require. We can provide that help by investing just $2.5 million. We can get them off the wait list and get them into our workforce. Let's do that together. There's another group with untapped potential, and not enough people appreciate what they have to offer: Pennsylvanians with disabilities. Lori's done extraordinary work on this. Lori and I care deeply about making sure Pennsylvanians with disabilities find jobs, and the companies that hire them find great value in the work that they do. We recognize the unique strengths they bring to our communities. That's why we've taken care to support 76,000 workers with disabilities through our Office of Vocational Rehabilitation under the wonderful leadership of Secretary Walker. Lori has met with CEOs from 20 Pennsylvania companies to discuss the benefits of hiring people of all abilities. And each one of them has agreed, and this budget invests more in the work that OVR does. Thank you for your work. Another way we can grow our workforce is by making sure people have the basic necessities of life. Think about it. It's almost impossible to hold down a job if you're worried about where you're going to sleep that night or where your next meal is going to come from. That's where our Investments in Health initiative comes in. For the last 3 years, led by Secretary Arkush, we've been working with our federal partners on an initiative to ensure those basic needs are met. We won their approval to use federal Medicaid dollars for this pilot program. Even Dr. Oz expressed his support for our initiative. Our pilot has the potential to save our Commonwealth millions of dollars. And the best part is, the upfront cost is very, very little. In fact, for less than $3 million, we'll be able to access more than double that in federal funding and potentially save millions of dollars and expand our workforce. Dr. Arkush, thank you for your leadership in this space. We're also making targeted investments to address some of our critical workforce shortages. Let me give you an example. Last year, we all of us identified a problem that we don't have enough child care workers, and that's because we don't pay them enough. So we came together to create the first state-funded child care recruitment and retention grant in Pennsylvania history. We gave $450 to 55,000 child care workers across our Commonwealth, and we showed them the respect that they deserve. People like Leah Lazowski, a teacher at Riverview Children's Center in Allegheny County, who I met in December. Leah has spent more than 20 years in this field. It's a passion for her. And this bonus will help her and her child care workers like her keep doing that vital work. We've already received more than 4,300 applications from child care centers to pay their workers and recruit more. The demand has been overwhelming. So this budget doubles down on that work and includes an additional $10 million to raise that recruitment and retention bonus from $450 to $630. Yep. That's more money in the pockets of our child care workers and more available child care for Pennsylvania families. It's a win-win. And as our kids get older, the need for well-trained, high-quality professionals, it doesn't end. We also need more early childhood educators and pre-K teachers, these kind and gentle souls who want to get our kids started on the right path, but who have been paid too little for too long. This budget delivers for them. And as our kids enter the K-12 system, we will ensure that there are more well-trained teachers there to meet them. 3 years ago, we came together in a bipartisan manner to create the student teacher stipend. Because look, if you're working full-time as part of your training to become a teacher, you should get paid for that. In our first year, we invested in 2,000 aspiring educators. People like Haley Sill, who join us here today. She's a teacher who I literally ran into at Susquehanna Township High School, who clap for Haley, there you go. Stand up, Haley. She came bounding out of her classroom to tell me she just graduated Pitt, H2P, and she got this stipend, which led her into this classroom in South Central Pennsylvania. And she came here to Harrisburg to help advocate for more students to be able to get it. We need more Haleys in our classroom, so let's increase our commitment to this initiative that we know works. As she and the other 2,000 student teachers show, if we put more money in people's pockets, we can get them into the jobs they love. You know how else we can put money in people's pockets? By finally raising the minimum wage here in Pennsylvania. Let the record reflect, I just noted that 25 senators stood up to clap for that. 25 senators did. So look, our minimum wage in Pennsylvania has been stuck at $7.25 for the last 16 years. In that time, every single one of our neighboring states has raised the wage for their workers. 4 of our 6 neighbors are at $15 an hour or more. Ohio is on their way to $15. Hell, even West Virginia is ahead of us. The House of Representatives, under the leadership of Leader Bradford and Speaker McClinton, has passed legislation to increase our minimum wage twice. And each time, despite the fact that there are obviously 25 votes in the Senate has refused to act. As Senator Tartaglione will tell you from the floor of the Senate later today, it has been 7,150 days since Pennsylvania last passed legislation to raise the minimum wage. That's hurting over 500,000 workers who are still making less than $15 an hour. But listen, clearly, those arguments haven't convinced our friends in the Senate to act over the last decade and a half. So let me offer one more reason why we need to do this. Because raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour will save this Commonwealth $300 million a year on entitlement programs like Medicaid. Not by adding arbitrary and cumbersome requirements that push people who still need help off the rolls, but by literally raising the wages of nearly 61,000 people who currently rely on Medicaid and make less than $15 an hour. So we can put more money in their pockets so they don't need Medicaid anymore. So listen, if you aren't going to do this because it's the right thing to do, or because it would let more families put food on the table for their kids, then do it because it's going to save us $300 million, shrink our entitlement budget by growing our workforce and putting more money back in workers' pockets. I am calling on the General Assembly to stop delaying and put a minimum wage bill on my desk, and I will sign it. So look, whether you're earning minimum wage or not, we see too many arbitrary barriers for people who are trying to get into our workforce. And my administration has led the way on fixing this. On my first day in office, I signed an executive order doing away with the college degree requirement for state government jobs. We tore down that wall that had been erected over time, and instead, we built a bridge to opportunity. Since then, 60% of our new hires don't have a college degree. But it isn't just Commonwealth employees who are benefiting from our focus on breaking down barriers. It's everyone who needs a license, permit, or certification from the Commonwealth to be able to practice their craft. Let me give you some examples. The Department of State, under Secretary Schmidt's outstanding leadership, oversees 29 licensing boards that confer 170 different licenses. When I took office, the processing time for many of these licenses was too damn slow. It took 25 days for a nurse to get their license 3 years ago. Today, it takes just 6 days. For pharmacists, hold your applause for Secretary Schmidt. We got some good ones here. For pharmacists, the wait was 26 days. Now it takes just 1 day. New barbers used to wait 12 days to get their license. Now they get that license the same day they apply for it. Think about it. I talked to my barber who cuts 12 heads a day. At $20 a pop, 12 days of waiting cost him $2,880. This is money back in Pennsylvanians' pockets. But there's still too much red tape getting in the way. For example, a barber in New Jersey needs to complete 900 hours of training to get their license. But if they want to get their license here in Pennsylvania, state law requires them to complete 1,250 hours of training. A pharmacist in Maryland needs to complete 1,000 hours, but for that same position here in the Commonwealth, our regulations require 1,500 hours. We've actually put ourselves at a competitive disadvantage by incentivizing workers to go practice in another state. So let's work together, as we have on permitting reform, to get rid of arbitrary licensing requirements and make it harder for qualified people to get on the job. And I thank Secretary Schmidt for his leadership in this space. In addition to the changes in the law that we can do together, I've directed Secretary Schmidt to conduct a comprehensive review of our licensing requirements and report back, not in a year or 6 months, but in 30 days, to ensure Pennsylvania is competitive with our neighbors. Look, everyone in this room wants their doctor to have completed their schooling and gone through a rigorous licensing process. I get that. And we all want our engineers to demonstrate that they know how to build a bridge. But we also have to acknowledge that some of this red tape is just unnecessary. And by eliminating it, we can tear down those walls that keep people out of our workforce, preventing people from getting the help that they need and deserve. Let me give you just one more example. The need for licensed mental health professionals is growing here in our Commonwealth. Demand for licensed social workers is projected to increase by another 12% over the next 4 years. Fortunately, there are amazing students like Paige Lombard, who's watching at home, hey Paige, who are studying to do this work. But right now, they have to complete their coursework and also complete a licensing process that's largely duplicative. Secretary Schmidt has partnered with our social work schools and with the Pennsylvania chapter of the National Association of Social Workers to support changes to our laws that will ensure that the final exams cover all the licensing requirements so students can receive their diploma and their license on the day they graduate. It's common sense. We need more of these critical professionals, and if you pass this reform, hear me on this, it will make Pennsylvania's process to license social workers the fastest in the country. Let's get it done. We all know that that need is real, because when people call our 988 call centers, when they're struggling, they need to be connected to these licensed professionals. Last year, 988 handled more than 145,000 calls from Pennsylvanians who are looking for help. This budget recognizes that and provides dedicated state funding for 988 for the first time ever. It also supports our walk-in crisis centers, the places that people often go to handle our most difficult cases. All of this builds on the investment that we've made together in county mental health services, recognizing that they're on the front lines of doing this work. This work is bipartisan, so let's keep it going, because there's more we need to do to protect Pennsylvanians, especially our kids. Over the last 8 months, under the able leadership of Secretary Arca, she and her team have been busy at work, meeting with a number of members in this room about how we can improve our child welfare system to keep our kids safe. Our system is supposed to be a place someone can turn to when they see something wrong. But right now, it's overburdened. And it's not set up to offer services to families who actually just need a little bit of extra help. Let me explain. There are many parents who are doing everything in their power to care for their kids, but then they get caught up in the system because they don't have enough money to put food on the table for the kids. They're working hard, they just can't make ends meet. To me, that parent is not the same as the one who purposefully and intentionally withholds food from a child. That's abuse. And those two parents shouldn't be treated the same way. But unfortunately, that's what's happening right now in our child welfare system. We've got to do more to help folks who are trying to be good parents and not let them get caught up in the system. I know that this is a priority for many members in this chamber on both sides of the aisle, which is why it receives increased funding in my budget. Let's make this the year where we work together to enhance Childline, update the Child Protective Services Act, and provide real help to those parents who are just trying their best. We can do that while at the same time holding accountable those who are abusing and neglecting our children. I held child abusers accountable as Pennsylvania's Attorney General, uncovering thousands of cases of abuse by hundreds of predator priests in a cover-up that extended all the way from Pennsylvania to the Vatican. I put behind bars pediatricians and teachers and coaches who abused children too. And every year since then, I have urged you to open up a civil window to give survivors a chance at real accountability. Leader Bradford has put a clean bill on the House floor 6 different times over the last 3 years, and it has passed each time. But I got to say it. I got to call it out. Senate Republicans have refused to act. Stop cowering to the special interests like insurance companies and lobbyists for the Catholic Church. Stop tying justice for abused kids to your pet political projects. Start listening to victims. Listen to the victims. It is shameful that this has gotten done in 30 other states who have followed our grand jury report's lead, but it has failed to pass here in our Commonwealth. So pass statute of limitations reform this year. Give survivors of sexual abuse the chance to confront their abusers in court. And just like we protect our kids, we've also got to make sure that there are strong protections in place to guard against those who would exploit abuse of our seniors. Under Secretary Kavulich's leadership, the Department of Aging has completely revamped the system for monitoring our Commonwealth's area agencies on aging, or AAAs. The AAAs provide a lot of the services that older adults in Pennsylvania rely on. They also investigate when an older adult is the victim of fraud or abuse. Secretary Kavulich has created a new system that judges every AAA on a set of criteria across 11 different categories. And for the first time ever, we are now posting those results on the department's website. That's why the Secretary and his team have received national recognition from experts in the field for these reforms. And my budget funds this important public safety initiative. But we need more than just funding. We need to update our laws, too, to protect our seniors. It has been nearly 30 years since the Older Adults Protective Services Act was really updated. It's so outdated that it doesn't even cover financial exploitation, the fastest growing form of elder abuse. Reverend Keith Marsh and his wife Deb, who join us here today, unfortunately experienced this. In 2024, criminals impersonating employees at their bank stole more than $850,000 from them. Those are entire life savings. And despite sudden transfers from their bank account, none of the actual employees at their bank flagged the transactions for suspected fraud. We need to put more safeguards in place. And so that's why I'm calling on the legislature to update our laws to include financial exploitation as a crime and empower DAs and attorney generals to prosecute these crimes. This is one of the many reforms we need to make to this law. So let's come together and get it done. It's common sense. To protect our kids and our seniors, we need to make sure every dollar we appropriate for their benefit goes to them and doesn't get fleeced from the system. As Attorney General, I prosecuted dozens of fraudsters and those who stole public benefits. Now the Office of Inspector General, led by another former AG, Michelle Henry, has continued that work alongside other state agencies. We combat fraud wherever we find it, and we put real resources into this effort because it's important to ensure that public dollars go to the people who really need them. In 2024, Pennsylvania charged 119 cases of Medicaid fraud and recovered more than $11 million. That's good. But we can build on those strong safeguards and give ourselves more tools to prosecute waste, fraud, and abuse by finally passing a False Claims Act in Pennsylvania. A False Claims Act allows us to collect additional damages and recoup more state dollars that would otherwise be lost to fraud. I know there is bipartisan support for this because I've literally stood with lawmakers of both parties advocating for a state False Claims Act. Let's finally get that done. Not only are we working to get more money back for our Commonwealth, we have been successful in putting more money back in people's pockets. I know Pennsylvanians are feeling the pinch of rising costs, from the tariffs imposed on our farmers to costs passed on to consumers as a result of congressional inaction on health care. Nearly 500,000 Pennsylvanians are seeing their health insurance premiums double this year because Congress failed to act. Of that, get this, of that 500,000, over 85,000 Pennsylvanians have already dropped health insurance in just the first 4 weeks of this year because of those cost increases. And the communities that are getting hit the hardest are rural counties in Pennsylvania. Look, I hear it every day. Trips to the grocery store cost more. Our utility bills go up. And for so many, the American dream of owning a home no longer feels possible. That's why here in Pennsylvania, we have come together to cut taxes 7 times since I took office. 7 times. We've put money back in the pockets of seniors, small businesses, families with childcare costs, and working Pennsylvanians just struggling to get by. Last year, we came together to advance the first new initiative in 54 years to address poverty and to help working families. Madam Speaker insisted on this. And together, we created the Working Pennsylvanians Tax Credit. And this year, This year, Madam Speaker, it is going to put $193 million back in the pockets of 940,000 Pennsylvanians. So my budget doesn't raise taxes. In fact, it continues to cut taxes, and it doesn't require a broad-based tax increase today, tomorrow, or at any point in the next 5 years. Listen, I know how this works. I know some of you are going to try and score political points by saying it does, but just by saying it doesn't make it true. What this budget does do is finally regulate and tax skill games and pass comprehensive cannabis reform in Pennsylvania. District attorneys from across the Commonwealth are calling on us to regulate skill games and finally provide law enforcement with clear guidance. We're putting our communities at risk and losing out on billions of dollars in revenue by doing nothing on both. Everyone knows we need to get this done. So let's come together and finally get it over the finish line. We need to cut costs, and we need to be more competitive. And one of the best ways to do that is by reducing the cost of energy for Pennsylvanians. One of our challenges is that our regional grid operator, PJM, has moved too slow to generate more power. 2 years ago, I sued PJM when I found out that they planned to jack up rates to the highest they've ever been. And as a result of our lawsuit, we capped the price PJM can charge and save consumers in the 13 PJM states, including Pennsylvania, over $18 billion so far. Last month, I led a bipartisan group of governors to the White House, where we signed a statement of principles calling on PJM to speed up the connection of new energy sources and extend that price cap for another 2 years, which will save 67 million Americans an additional $27 billion. I'm going to let the Trump administration know you didn't clap for them. All right. PJM is just one part of the problem. But we know that there are other factors that affect Pennsylvania utility bills. The amount that comes from the energy you use represents only about 20% on your bill. Another big chunk comes from fees and costs that your local utility company charges to get electricity to your home. Our utility companies in Pennsylvania, well, they make billions of dollars every year, while at the same time, they've increased the cost for consumers with too little public accountability or transparency. That's going to change. So last month, I called the 4 largest electric utility companies in Pennsylvania into my office, and I pushed them to do their part to help control rising costs for Pennsylvanians. I made clear that if they were unwilling to act, the Public Utility Commission would step in and force them. Following that conversation, PECO, Duquesne Light, First Energy, and PPL, all of whom join us here today, have agreed to take 4 important initial steps to rein in costs starting today. First, they will end the so-called black box settlements and agree to set prices transparently so Pennsylvanians will know exactly how much money they are earning and how utility dollars are being spent. Second, they will work with my administration and with the General Assembly to enact common sense reforms that will ban deceptive contracts by retail providers, which could save Pennsylvanians hundreds of millions of dollars. Third, they agreed to eliminate junk fees that they charge low-income Pennsylvanians to have their service reconnected, something that literally can be done with the press of a button at the Utilities Control Center. And that alone will save Pennsylvanians millions of dollars each year on their bills. And fourth, they will work with both chambers to extend and expand Chapter 14 protections for low-income and vulnerable Pennsylvanians all across our Commonwealth. These steps will save consumers money immediately. And while I do appreciate our utility leaders for working together to cut costs for consumers, I want to be clear, this is just a start. They have a lot more work to do. And so that's why I'm taking 3 further steps today. First, I'm calling on the PUC to better scrutinize utility spending. I want the PUC to examine every single line of every single bill to ensure each customer dollar is being well spent. We're joined today by Chairman Steve DeFrank and members of the PUC who have agreed to begin working on this immediately. Thank you for your service to the people of Pennsylvania. Second, I've created a new watchdog within my administration, a special counsel for energy affordability, tasked with closely examining utility rate requests and taking legal action to stop utility companies from jacking up their rates and costing you more. And third, look, we need to have a hard conversation about the amount of profit utilities and their investors make on the backs of hardworking Pennsylvanians. S&P Global Ratings currently ranks Pennsylvania as one of the top 4 states in the country for utilities to make a profit. At a time when consumers are struggling with high costs, our utilities need to be more sensitive to the realities of their customers. I'm working with the PUC to prevent excessive utility profits this year. But the General Assembly needs to take action to lower costs for consumers going forward by giving the PUC a set of benchmarks to follow when determining how much profit a utility company can make. Because understand, we grant these utilities a monopoly, and in exchange, they have a legal responsibility to keep their costs just and reasonable. They shouldn't get $1 more than what they need to meet their customers' demand. Together, these steps will save Pennsylvanians over $500 million on their energy bills every year. And if you act with legislation, the savings can be even greater. But look, I recognize the most consequential way we can lower energy prices is by generating more energy. It's a simple supply and demand. Pennsylvania is an energy leader. We should be proud of that. And I'm an all-the-above energy governor. And for the last several years, I've heard people on the other side of this building making excuses for why they couldn't talk about energy. And those excuses always centered on Pennsylvania's entry into RGGI way back in 2019. So we came together on a bipartisan basis last year to remove RGGI from the conversation. And we also came together on a bipartisan basis to remove your excuse for not moving forward on energy plans. So now is the time to act. I've put forward my lightning plan, a comprehensive plan to build more energy generation here in the Commonwealth, reform our permitting and siting laws, and diversify our energy sector to generate more renewables. My plan will save consumers $664 million and create 15,000 energy sector jobs, Rob Baer. And it is supported by labor leaders, environmentalists, consumer advocates, and even energy producers. Look, this is my plan. If you don't like it, stop making excuses, put your proposal on the table, and let's get to work already. Pennsylvanians can't afford another delay from Harrisburg. It's not just the cost of heat to heat our homes that's stressing folks out right now. Housing prices are too high as well. A lot of people are worried about whether they can afford a house at all. Home prices and rents are rising faster than wages. Over half of all homes in Pennsylvania are more than 50 years old, making them more expensive to repair. And if we don't take action now, we'll be short 185,000 homes by 2035. The mayor knows this. That's why today I am proposing bold new steps to reform our zoning laws, build more housing, and protect renters and homeowners. Like energy, one of the most effective ways we can lower costs is by simply building more housing. That starts at the local level, where zoning laws and ordinances vary across all 2,560 of our municipalities. Yet right now, we literally don't even have a catalog of all those rules. We need to make one so that we can help local governments understand what works best to build more affordable housing. That also means working with local communities to modernize the municipal planning code, to build where it makes sense, and to cut red tape where it's necessary. It means creating standards for accessory dwelling units, facilitating transit-oriented development, and streamlining mixed-use development on main streets and commercial corridors. It also means building on our successes after doubling the amount of money available for FAIR. It also means making a major investment in building new housing. And to do that, my budget creates a new $1 billion critical infrastructure fund. And this fund This fund will be supported by issuing bonds that will go toward housing and other needed infrastructure projects. And thanks to our improved bond ratings, the Commonwealth will actually save $25 million compared to what this would have cost just 2 years ago. Rather than tinker with this, let's go big on housing and let's make a real impact. We need hundreds of thousands of new homes, and this is how we build them. But it's not just about building more houses and apartments, it's also about making sure those who live in them aren't taken advantage of. Right now, landlords are allowed to charge exorbitantly high fees just to submit a rental application. Those fees are meant to cover the cost of a background check, but too oftentimes landlords are charging 2, 3, 4 times the cost. I'm calling on a statewide cap on rental application fees, limiting them to the actual cost of screening and prohibiting landlords from charging fees before a tenant can view that property. Out-of-state private investors, well, they're also raising housing costs. Christine Zimmer, who lives in Berks County and joins us here last year, they downsized in 2019 in order to move closer to their grandkids. They bought in a manufactured home community, a community where they own the home, but the company owns the land that it sits on and charges them rent for it. That's how the trouble started. The fee Christine pays to that company has nearly doubled since she moved in 6 years ago, creating a huge financial burden. This has become far too common across these kinds of communities, and there are 56,000 of these households across Pennsylvania, people living on land that more and more is being bought up by private equity. I'm asking you to pass legislation limiting annual lot rent increases for manufactured home communities to protect grandmoms like Christine from predatory private equity. Thank you for being here, Christine. Thank you. We've actually seen bipartisan bills in the Senate introduced on this topic. And just yesterday, a bipartisan group of House members stood together to advance this issue. Let's pass those together. Together. That's the operative word here. We have shown what's possible when we work together, even when it takes longer than it should. We all recognize it took too long last year, and that had real impacts on Pennsylvanians. But we learned some valuable lessons through that process. We learned that we all need to be at the table, and that we all need to be at the table sooner. When we all sat together, majority and minority, we made real progress. In that spirit, I've invited the leaders of all 4 caucuses to my office tomorrow to begin this process in earnest. And I appreciate the fact that they've all accepted this invitation. Thank you. But despite the extended process, all of us agree we made real progress last year. Progress that unlocks 2 of the most powerful forces in our society, hope and optimism. And that's what we're beginning to see more of. You can feel it on our farms and in our skyscrapers, along our main streets and in our classrooms. At a time when dysfunction and chaos reigns elsewhere, Pennsylvania is showing we can be a model for steady progress when we come together, treat others with respect, and find ways to extend a helping hand to our neighbors. When William Penn arrived on the banks of the Delaware River in what is now Chester, Pennsylvania in 1682, aboard a ship named Welcome, he set out to create a place that would be an example to the nations. A place that would be open to all people with free elections, free expression, and the freedom to worship as you wish as central tenets of our new home. I know all that feels at risk right now, to not only many in this chamber, but to millions of Pennsylvanians. At a time when it feels like others' values are changing, ours remain the same. While some are attacking our citizens based on what they look like, where they come from, who they love, or who they pray to, we are demonstrating respect for all. As other states raise taxes, we're operating with a healthy surplus and cutting them. When others put in place policies to make costs rise, we ease the burden. At a time when people from different parties can't find ways to work together elsewhere, we know we have to get around the table here to make progress. So let's come together and make smart investments in schools and safety and economic development. Let's cut costs and cut taxes. Let's protect our fundamental freedoms, and let's continue our rise. And so, under the watchful eyes of our elders, learning from those Pennsylvanians who came before us and taking inspiration from their example, let's go forward with a sense of common purpose to build on our progress and to continue to get stuff done. Thank you. God bless you. And may God watch over the men and women of the Pennsylvania National Guard. Thank you very much.
The chair asks that members of the House and visitors to please remain seated for just a moment while the members of the Senate leave the hall of the House. The business for which the joint session has been assembled having been transacted, the joint session is now adjourned.